I guess I could talk about this a little bit, and I'll probably put it somewhere or other. Who knows? But yes, Penguin Random House to buy Simon and Sulster, if that's how you say it. I mess up names and everything else under the sun every day because I murder the English language. All right. Well, they sold them to Penguin for more than 2 billion. Um, the it's kind of like it's weird. It's like indies are going in the exact opposite direction of Tradpub. Like there's more and more indie imprint houses being created that I've seen. Like as terms of mid-list indie houses. Again, there's God, the guy who did Catherian Gambit and everything. Like there's bigger indie houses like that now, where it's like, oh, I recognize this name, or oh, I recognize that name. You know, they each are building up their own kind of like setup with writers, maybe either like 10 to 20 of them or more in some cases. And even most indies are really trying to get their work out there by using, anthologies and everything else like that. Again, I'll link a few of these mid-level houses I've seen below just so you can see an example of what some of them are doing to really proliferate, Because even Jay and Cheney and a few others, Onspach and Cole, basically, even though they set up Galaxy's Edge there, um, both of them still, break off to do their own thing every once in a while. And I've just noticed that it's like, the bigger movers and shakers in Indie Land seem to be coalescing around each other to kind of like do a feedback effect, which the traditional publishing houses, it's just teetering off to where it's like they're only promote the sure, oh, it's going to sell millions and millions of dollars type of deals or more, like, the Brandon Sandersons, the Stephen Kings, the sweetheart deals with, prominent political figures. Like, that's mostly what you're seeing out of their end of things for the most part. I honestly think maybe Daw and Bane, maybe one other might be all that's left of what I would consider like they'll print people that are mid list, maybe around that area, because a lot of traditionally published mid listers, I've noticed they've kind of tapered off, and most of them pretty much live off of Patreon, donations and things like that, or they're basically putting their uh, some of their social media stuff forward to gather up funds for things. You're not going to get as many breakaway hits in traditional publishing land as you used to, and this is all because they're they're floundering. Um, I mean, the Barnes and Noble near my house still does fairly well in the grand scheme of things with COVID, but it's not frequented as much for my particular wheelhouse of, science fiction and fantasy. When I go in there, most of the customers gravitate towards um, nonfiction, like cookbooks, what's on the clearance shelves, just to see if there's anything they can go with, in that aspect. Manga is still fairly healthy, uh, all things considered. Most of the younger people, that's where they're congregated at if they are inside a Barnes& and Noble. Oh, boy. I gotta go get myself a drink. I'll be right back. Plus, I can only really use my own experience, in terms of even buying habits and everything else. When I do go to a brick and mortar store, it's not to find my personal wheelhouses of escapism, unless they happen to have some classics, on the clearance area, or even God, I'm trying to remember what was the last one I got there. I think it was Foundation, like the collection of like all the books into one big hardback, and that was a couple of years ago in terms of buying for you know kind of fiction, any kind of fiction really. I think the most recent time I went there, it's been at least a solid year. Um, I got my uncle a how to cook various meat products with a whole different types of alcohol in beer, especially. That's basically what I use most of Barnes and Noble stuff for nowadays, anyway. Mostly to gather up cookbooks. Yay! Oh boy! But I guess to get back to this article, it said the deal announced on Wednesday includes provisions that would prevent Viacom CVS in the event of a sale is squashed by authorities. Uh, let's see, they would pay what is known as a termination fee if the deal does not go through. The sale of the company will profoundly reshape the publishing industry, increasing a winner-take-all business in which the largest companies compete for brand name writers and guaranteed bestsellers. Guaranteed. Again, the traditional publishing will not create more J.K. Rowling's or Stephen King's. Even trying to remember Polini and even Sanderson. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't get paid more than a million or two for the stuff that they put out, or even maybe up to 3 million. Um, Even that one deal that Tor made with Scalzi for a couple $1 million, that's probably not going to happen in today's day and age, and it hasn't really happened too much in like the last decade, I want to say. Oh boy, but yeah, the book business has seen wave after wave of consolidation in the past decade. Because again, remember at one point I did mention like most stuff after 2010, you should pretty much highly suspect or of being more of a political ploy or political springboard than actual storytelling. Yeah. The book business has seen wave after wave of consolidation. And the merger of Penguin and Random House in 2013. Oh man, News Corp's purchase of the romance publisher Harlequin. You know what? Now that I think about it, even in my quest to slay all the IKEA ab books that keep showing up in my search results, I've noticed that even the Harlequin stuff, like they've really started putting out a whole lot of like, this is the collection of bestseller blah blah blah, and it'll have like 5 to 10 books shoved in there, and like for what, for like $3.99, $4.99 sometimes. I think some of these companies, what they're doing is they're taking a look at the backlog that they do have and be like, okay, let's just throw it out there as a collection to see what kind of money can stick. And for all that my frustration with Harlequin romance type setups before I had my coughing fit, but yeah, they have a tendency to sell like gangbusters. It's the reason why even on the indie side, it's just like, oh dear God, here comes the parade of abs again. Quick, Chauncey, get me my rifle. I must shoot them all. Get out of my search feed. Please and thank you. Oh boy. But yeah, they sell awful, ridiculous amount. It that's why I go kind of gaga if I see like, oh my God, it's a bit cleaner romance with like a courtly kind of aspect to it, where it's just like they're two giant dork people in love or something. It's like yay! Kind of like again what I'm doing with Uplift Protocol. If you want to see what I find some aspects of fun in romance is like both parties are complete and absolute dorks. And then of course, rather than having like that crazy level of build up where it's like the tug of war of will they, won't they? Like, no, I don't really want to do that sort of tension. I just like I just throw things together where yeah, I think it's more adorable just to see people like no, yeah, basically friends and understanding each other, and then there's that added element of well, they're also a bit more. And this element I think is also missing from a whole lot of romance stuff in general. Like it's not a bad thing to have, the main love interest for a male character or a female character to have a sense of like fulfillment or even a sense of caring where they genuinely like each other. They genuinely like hanging out with each other and not just bumping uglies. So, to get back to this article, because, let's see. And apparently, that Hatchet Book Group, they had an acquisition of whatever Perseus Books is. Oh, they're all basically becoming even more of a megacorp than even Amazon. At least this is what it feels like. This fall, uh, Harcourt announced it was exploring a sale of its trade publishing division and could be an attractive target for a large publishing company like Macmillan or Hachette. Because, God, one of these days I'm going to just look at like just how many subsidiaries Macmillan has. Because I know Tor is one of their subsidiaries. Simon and Schuster, which publishes prominent authors like Stephen King, Don DeLeo, Bob Woodward, and Doris Kearns Goodwin, and Walter Isaacson. And of all those, I only recognize basically Stephen King, but I guess the rest of them might be more well known in general fiction or even, dare I say it, bodice rippers. But yes. Um, oof. By them merging all this stuff together, they'll have a backlist of more than 30,000 titles. So, what does that mean for any mid-list people that they might still have in their library? Because I've noticed some people that were pretty well established in Tradland, they're going kind of like a hybridization route where their backlog is slowly being turned back over to them, like Margaret Weiss and Hickman. Some of her books are currently being published under her own auspices. And I've noticed that with a couple other traditional setups where, yeah, it takes quite a few years, a decade or more in some cases, and they start to republish their backlog. So I'm guessing if you don't make the cut of the jib as much as King does, where it's like he can basically wave his hand and boom, like oh, it's a instant bestseller. Um, yeah, it looks like it's going to just be a collection of you want more Sarah J. Moss, you want more J.K. Rowling, you want more Sanderson. Well, these will be the only ones you can choose from because this is the only ones we're going to really keep promoting. And it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of like what else is on the market. And lots of different genre markets will keep shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And then they're going to look around and it's like, oh, damn. Um, what else is left? Where can I go to? Heck, even God, I'm trying to remember Zahn. Even he went into some indie publishing. I mean, he tackled it like a traditional publishing guy, putting his foot into indie publishing, but with his you know reputation alone, he was able to basically pull in some decent numbers for his indie project. But yeah, this is going to get rough. I mean, you thought their death knell, well, yeah, their beginning death rattle happened a while back, but this year has really stuck a stake into a whole lot of different kinds of pre-established industries where it's like on the one hand Even though we lost the traditional theater that's near us, dozens of drive-through theaters have popped up. Drive-ins have popped up. So it's like, so on one hand, we're kind of going backwards, but on the other hand, it's like, oh, we gotta reevaluate this new kind of conundrum we're in. Luckily for Florida, they're not going to shut us down again. Mmm, delicious. I can get my hair cut whenever I darn well feel like it. Oh God. Let's see. It's going back into like the founding of this company, but apparently they got into a spat with the president, and uh, because they publicated some books that were critical of him by John Bolton and a few others. I was like, oh boy. Honestly, that is like one of those areas where a whole lot of politicians walk, because one side will say like, oh, this is libel and everything else, and then the other side will use it as a crud, like a hammer, to basically like, oh, this is protected under blah blah blah. So the back and forth on liable, and if I'm saying that correctly, and hearsay, and tarnishing of reputations. There is supposed to be protections against that, but seems like one side benefits more than the other, just in my opinion. Let's see. The company had a profitable year in spite of such hurdles. Revenue grew to 649 million through September, an 8% increase. Well, uh, the thing is, guys, if you compare that to say what even Amazon is making, that's kind of anemic. Okay, so for Simon Schuster's owner, the all cash deal will help. Yeah, like I was putting earlier, will help the company pay down its 21 billion debt load and keep up dividend payments to shareholders. Oh my God, that's such a ridiculous amount of debt. I'm just glad I don't really have any debt to my name. Although I guess if you really wanted to put it in layman's terms, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, upon my death, like, all of a sudden, I owe X amount of Y and Z to the government. I wouldn't even be surprised, since the dead seem to vote nowadays. Okay, let's see. The sale of Simon & Schuster is part of a great unwinding taking place across media industry as conglomerates cleave off or close down ancillary businesses. Let's see. Yeah, they also own Paramount Studios, Nickelodeon, and has bet its future on streaming, and books won't play a big role in that strategy. I mean, much more knowledgeable people than me have already pointed out that, kind of like Blockbuster versus Redbox, traditional publishing will not abandon its setup with printing hardbacks or paperbacks. They don't do print on demand. The effects of that is seen in the clearance section of the Barnes and Noble. They just pray that they can sell through their initial print runs, kind of like traditional comics, and hope that it doesn't end up in the dustbin of history. So they really are still hanging on to a model that will drag them into the ground, like what happened with Blockbuster. Um, they have to be a little bit more quick on their feet, and some indies that are on the pulse of that are recognizing that. That's why some of them are growing exponentially versus stagnation. Uh, whew. So let's see. They would maintain editorial independence and would continue to publish the same volume of books under its new ownership. Um, oh boy, let's see if there's anything else that pops out to me as I'm looking down at this thing. Maybe that's the reason why some trad publisher writers, a lot of their stuff was moved back too. Maybe since these bigger houses knew this sort of thing was going to shift. That's possible. Um, Still, some authors and literary organizations expressed alarm at the news at that the largest company would gain even greater market share. I worry that it's going to force authors out of the industry, and I worry that it's going to force really great people who work in the industry out. Okay, I don't know who Pulis Books is, but again, it just showcases the fact that a fair amount of more prolific indies, they're either utilizing a lot of ghostwriters to keep, the buzz on their series going. They're just basically flat out producing traditional publishing left, right, and up the middle because they've tapped into that market where everybody binge reads, just like they binge watch stuff. And I know what things I like in my wheelhouse, so that's the reason why I'm trying to slow down and sniff the flowers and whatnot. Um, Tiptoe through the tulips and be like, okay, let me take a really good look at this and just like take it in. But indies really have tapped into a whole lot of things that traditional publishing just I, I honest to God, you know, wonder like how are they just living off of their high end earners? Like, how can you be throwing all this money out and just hoping to continue? Because it's hard enough for people to get discovered in traditional setups. It has Each side has their pluses and minuses. Like with traditional, you don't have to market your stuff as much. You kind of get a more built-in thing, but it also depends on like what kind of market the traditional aspects really do. They have a good pulse on what potential audience they have. It's just boggles the mind. So let's see what else we have here. I'll pause it for a moment so you don't get a bunch of dead air. And this would also basically shrinks the aspect of mid-listers. The number of large mainstream publishing houses will go from 5 to 4, further reducing competition in an already sparse competitive environment. For authors, it means that there will be fewer competing bidders for their manuscripts, which will inevitably drive down advances offered. And as I do my research on how indies do publish things, because right now, again, my Uplift Protocol thing is a definite passion project. I want to finish the series first, and like I've said before, I'll go back through and like re-edit things. I already make notes. It's like if for like any kind of continuity errors and things like that. Sometimes I even catch them before they happen, but that's why you also need an editor to look at your stuff, like because editors will key in on different things. So as I learn how to do that, because there's a whole lot of stuff you have to learn before you just throw your book out there and be like, why did it only sell like 5 copies? Now, I don't think there is any really true big shortcuts. It's just a case of learning what you're doing before you basically dive off that springboard. In traditional publishing circles, the writer just writes and hands over their manuscript and everything. And there's different people that do different things. The acquisition stuff, like they find more people to promote and things like that. But with the way things are going, the cry of maybe you should just indie publish seems to be getting louder and louder. Let's see. The merger will be reviewed by I don't give a damn's team, according to whoever Eric Gordon is, a professor at the Ross School of Business at University of Michigan. Uh-huh. I just yeah, this does not bode well for them. Will I keep tabs on a couple of favorite trad writers that I still read? Yes. It seems like some of them are already sensing the change in the wind and they're planning accordingly by becoming kind of like hybrid, some indie, some trad. Some might end up becoming more indie rather than trad later. But yeah, let's see. They cited Amazon as a competitive threat to the overall book market. The combination of Simon and Schuster and Penguin would be below 20%, the company said. Um, well, that's the thing. Like, Amazon in and of itself does have the lion's share. But then when you get to the nitty gritty of it, readers like me have a hard time finding what we like. But when we do find it, it's like, throw a woman a bone. I'm going questing. Get me my rifle, Chauncey. I have to go shoot some more abs now. Okay. Ooh, boy. But yeah, I would say they say it's a ripple effect. The sale could also have it ripple effect throughout the literary ecosystem. The biggest houses are better equipped to negotiate favorable terms with major retailers like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and other big box stores. Thing is, Barnes and Noble, um, they they might still have a fairly decent amount of brick and mortar stores, but I've noticed in order for stuff like Books a Million to stay alive, they've become kind of like a hybrid shop. They have books and everything there, but they also have music, they have DVDs, they have miniatures, they have tabletop. They sell more than just novels. They've had to. They had to make something that could catch people's eye no matter what their particular buying habits are. Even Amazon's putting out its own brick and mortar stores just to test the waters. This whole thing is not going to end well. And I'm just a layman looking at it. Um, for literary agents and art writers, the wave of consolidations has meant fewer potential buyers for books from authors without a proven track record. This is where indies actually will level the playing field. Because with the indie market, you can put some money down on somebody that's completely brand new and see if it tickles your fancy or your wheelhouse. And it's not as much of a unknown as, say, a Kindle edition from a trad pub that's like $15, and they're not a proven thing like Sanderson or something else. It's like, is someone really going to plop $15 down on somebody they don't know versus somebody that's been promoted to high heaven and has the social proof of, hey, they have a built-in audience now. So it's kind of like a Ouroboros. Not to yank on the poor chain of Uplift Protocol. But yes, it's infinitely eating itself. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and they were saying like there's some projects that could have gone for thousands of dollars, like 150K, that might not sell at all now to the big five, is where the book that would have sold 500,000 might go for 1 million. They rather would go in for the bigger thing than have that they have the most consensus on. It could also basically showcase why mainstream stuff is so homogenized nowadays. They want to cash in on the nostalgia bucks. They don't want to be as innovative because it's like in this market it's shrinking so badly. No, even though outside of books, comics, and everything else, even in regular entertainment, you don't get animated seasons that are like 50 plus issues long, like even like the old He-Man or She-Ra's and everything else like that. You don't get that anymore. And woo boy. So I guess to get to the kind of like the end of this article, um, with its pending acquisition of Simon Schuster, Penguin Random House will dwarf other major publishers, giving an estimated market share of some 30% of the U.S. book market. The company has developed sophisticated online marketing networks and the only major publisher in the United States whose warehouses ship books 7 days a week. So basically, yeah, if there's not as much stiff competition to get decent stuff out there, you'll end up with the modern Drek effect. You know, the indies, bless them and all, a lot of them, there's a fierce competition to get people to take notice of you. And usually, fierce competition breeds better books. Have a good night, everybody.